Yo, check out my website, www.theclownthompson.net. That's clown spelled with K, as you see here. As you see, here are my rants here. I'll be more and more regular in posting rants in the future. You see what I have going on here. Also, you can also get your merch here at www.cafepress.com. Search for the Clown Sports. You see here I have sweatshirts, hoodies, baby gear, mugs, t-shirts. So just come on over and grab yourself some merch.
All right. Welcome to tonight's Florida State Got Screwed edition of the Klown Podcast. I'm Scott Burks. Please continue to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I got shorts up there almost every day. Trying to be more regular with the podcast thing. But even if you agree or disagree, and probably gonna be a lot of both tonight, just feel free to chime in, because at the end of it, you'll be glad you did. And I'll be glad you did. And you see these two fellas on, because if you paid attention to college football this past weekend, you will know what's going on, and you have an idea why we are sitting here tonight. So anyway, you guys know who they are already, but I'm introduced anyway. It's Jeff Fann and Matthew Warner from the All Sports Discussion ACC Sports blog. We have plenty to talk about tonight for sure. So, gentlemen, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving and ready to power into a great holiday season.
Pretty much. Too bad the holidays pretty much missed the ACC, so let's just get to it. Y'all know what happened, right? Florida State finished undefeated. Beat two SEC teams along the way in LSU and Florida away from home. The latter with a second and third string quarterback in what was a huge rivalry game. We all know how rivalry games how crazy those can be. But for some reason, despite the fact we finished 13-0, beat a damn good Louisville team in the ACC championship game in front of a great crowd, by the way, wasn't good enough for the committee. They claimed that the Seminoles were not the same team without the injured Jordan Travis. And to an objective observer, well, no crap, of course, it's different. However, the committee was tasked and have been for the past most of the time the 14 players have been instituted. They put the most deserving teams in. Meaning, win your games, check all the boxes, and then you can get in. Except for this season, they didn't make the college football playoff because A, Texas beat Alabama, and Alabama really beat Georgia, and B, that college football playoff couldn't stomach keeping the SEC out. So anyway, before I get going, I'm gonna hand the floor off to Jeff. You had a lot to say on Twitter, man. So I have a feeling that, because I have more to say, but I'm gonna yield the floor to you because I've been talking like I've been blue in the face on both Twitter, TikTok especially, and on YouTube. So, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point here. I don't even know what to say about it.
Right.
It was just the most appalling thing one of the most appalling things I've ever seen in sports, and the number of inconsistencies they threw out and their reasoning. I mean, everything about it is just a slap in the face of a slap in the face of like what is competitive about sports. They didn't watch Florida State fairly at all. I truly believe that if Jordan Travis would have been available now, that they would have tried to find a way not to include Florida State because there was a risk of an SEC team being listed. I've always been like, hey, I know there's bias and we know what ESPN does, but you always felt like there was still a little bit of integrity to the whole sport, because they could still decide things on the field. But that's clear. We're not doing that anymore. We're not deciding results on the field. It's like, I don't remember who said it, but college football has basically just become figure skating now.
It's a beauty contest. It's a beauty contest.
And even figure skating has a list of rules that you have to abide by when you're making judgment.
And they do for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, they do for the most part. So I don't want to disrespect figure skating.
Right.
It was the most appalling thing I've ever seen, and the justifications coming out from some of the ESPN personalities, they just sounded so agenda driven.
Of course.
That it's just not fun anymore. It just takes away from it on so many levels. Because if you honestly say that, hey, Florida State is not the team they were with Jordan Travis, I can agree they weren't the team. But you can't tell me they may not have been a better team, because defensively over the last 4 or 5 weeks, monsters, exactly. They were winning with defense. Their defense was playing better than any of the 4 teams in the playoffs. I guarantee that defense, if Brock Glenn would have played in those games, the third string quarterback, who, I mean, God bless him, he did his best, but he was a true freshman. That defense could have kept them in that game against any of the teams in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And for the committee to justify it in such a way just shows that it was agenda driven. There's no other answer for it. There's no way on this planet that there wasn't another agenda behind that. And one thing I do like about Coach Prime, he came out and just said it. He said, hey, it's entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to put together Alabama into the field, to shoehorn them in. But if Florida State is in the playoffs with Tate Rodemaker, I firmly believe they could have won a game.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know if they could have won a national championship, because I think Jordan Travis on that level would have got into some of the games, but I'm confident they could have won at least one game and been competitive in a national championship game. They belong there. Yeah. And the argument that Alabama was better, I don't see it unequivocally. This was a team that was one play, 4th and 31 from losing to a team that
Thank you.
Lost
I was
by,
going to say just that. Thank you.
Not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns to New Mexico State the week before.
Yes.
And all of the reasoning was so ludicrous about, oh, we'll put them in because I'd rather face Alabama. I was thinking about it. I was like, well, who would I rather face? You know what? In some ways, I would rather face Alabama because I can move the ball on them. And I know that I can move the ball and score on them. And I saw it in both games, Georgia and Auburn. That defense was not what it was earlier in the year. It can be pushed around. And, they're they're one quarterback injury from not even being, in my opinion, a top 6 or 7 team. But all of that went out the window, and it's a bummer to the sport.
You know what? Right quick before I go to you, Matthew, to Jeff's point about Jordan Travis, even if he was still healthy, they would have found a way to screw him. Kirk Herbstreit gave the game away 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't know if you guys caught this, but and I'll be very quick. They basically had a doomsday scenario, what if scenario, that being if Alabama were to beat Georgia, right? What would happen? It's on YouTube. Basically, Kirk Herbstreit said, well, as messed up as it is, I will put Texas and Alabama in ahead of Florida State. That was when they had Jordan Travis healthy and they were rolling.
Yeah.
That they outed them. He outed them. It was just because they're afraid of the big, bad, and I do the quotations this year, SEC. They were afraid of Greg Sankey. They were afraid of Paul Firebaum and this bozo, the clown-looking haircut. They were afraid of all these pundits from SEC Network because they to their credit, they crowed the loudest. Paul Feinbaum has been the SEC hype man for the last decade plus. We don't have that in the ACC. At least they wouldn't put him on TV. And at least Greg Sankey is willing to fight. What the hell has Jim Phillips been doing? The commissioner of the ACC. He's been sitting around twinning in his tweed coat. He's not fighting. You got to be willing to fight. It's like they. Anyway, go ahead, Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on that, Scott, I totally 100% agree with you. I mean, the SEC, they are geniuses at propaganda.
Yes.
If you win the series against them, if the ACC and SEC, you know, ACC won the series this year, 6-4.
Yeah.
They said, "Oh, it's context. You didn't play our best teams." Then if you beat LSU, oh, they're a better team now than they were then. If you beat them at the end of the year, oh, it was SEC grind. You know, there's an excuse. If Florida State beats Georgia by 100, Georgia didn't want to be there. If Georgia beats Florida State, then it was like, yeah, see, we told you so. I mean, they're brilliant. They're absolutely.
I'll say this though. The irony in Georgia, the Georgia subject, they're both pissed. Georgia's pissed because they felt they got screwed in their minds. So there's going to be people probably opting out of the Orange Bowl, and I'm going to be too surprised. Not only if Florida State says, no, screw this shit, we're boycotting ESPN. Fill in your own Orange Bowl. Don't be surprised if Georgia were to do the same thing, or at least support them.
And that's another thing. If you thought Georgia was the #1 team in the country the week before and they lost by 3 points, they fell into number 6, and you think that Florida State is better than Georgia and Ohio State, you ranked them there, and they're not one of the 4 best teams because of all this X, Y, and Z excuses. But there's one thing I do want to say, and I know Matthew's got an opinion on this. What you said about Jim Phillips, I do think that his continued, he's made one statement about what happened, and that's a bad look. I mean, he should be front and center doing interviews, and this has been the perfect opportunity because the last 48 hours on the ACC network has been the first time that the ACC network was not just a channel about the ACC, but for the ACC, because their media personalities, Eric McLean, EJ Manuel,
Darryl Royal.
Yeah, Eddie Royal.
Eddie Royal.
Yeah. David Hale, Andrea Adelson. I mean, they have been on the network. Mark Packer, Taylor Tannenbaum. I mean, they have let ESPN and SEC, they let them have it. But where's Jim Phillips? For the ACC, that was the first time I really felt like, man, the ACC network, they're really going to bat. They're saying stuff here that you're not hearing anywhere else. But Jim Phillips, man, he's MIA again.
Yeah, and props to Booker McFarland for coming to the ACC defense as well. He's been a great job. Before I get to you, Matthew, I'm going to do my sponsor shout right quick. So the BetUS.com, so let's let sports better. It's your favorite sports book. BetUS.com is right for our 30th year of info action with the industry's biggest sign-up bonus up to 200% rather. BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, UFC, and MLB. So if you're looking for a live in-game betting with incredible odds, with daily odds, boosters, props, and parlays, got them. How about fast payouts and exceptional one-on-one customer service? We got that too. So log into BETUS.com or call 800-792-3887. That's 800-79-BET-US. You can use the promo code TKT for the Klown Times as well. BetUS.com, where the game begins. All right, Matthew, I want to get you in here quickly. This is going to be a part 1 of a 2 or 3-parter. Okay, so basically, where the hell is Jim Phillips? I think he's failed the ACC. We're going to get to more of that next week, possibly. But what if you're Florida State? If you're the rest of the ACC, Matthew, and Jeff, you can chime in as well. ESPN all but told you, F you. That's what they essentially told the ACC. You'll know better than the American. You'll know better than the MAC. You're no better than the Sun Belt, which is a damn good conference, by the way. You're no better than Conference USA. You're no better than the Mountain West. That's what ESPN told Florida State, Clemson, and the rest of the and Louisville and the rest of the ACC. And it's a damn shame.
I mean, it absolutely is, because here's the deal. Like I asked Jeff last night on the podcast, I said, hey, do you think Jim Phillips should resign? I mean, I actually asked him that. I asked him that because I think he needs to consider resigning, because it isn't really getting any better under him. You know, the situation isn't really getting any better under him. Mm-hmm. And I actually think the university presidents need to consider meeting about that. And you know, mentioning these sorts of things that we have talked about with him, because he really should have been doing this every week, all year long, for the team, for any team that was in the national hunt. Not just having a statement, you know, after the fact about how this is an egregious decision. Everybody knows that. You need to be lobbying all year long. You need to, and I've mentioned this on your podcast before, and I mentioned to Jeff. I mean, my uncle actually wrote a dissertation on, was a chair of a dissertation on strategic planning and communications for the Atlantic Coast Conference in the 80s. He was actually the chair for somebody's dissertation. This is still noticeably lacking today in the ACC. You know,
it's not. They're culturally, I don't know if they're culturally silent or they don't give a damn. I don't know, Matthew. I just don't know, dude.
And there's one thing I want to add too. I mean, like, because Jeff talked about figure skating and rules and things like that. I would argue that the rules that Alabama should be judged by are really much older than figure skating, because if we're looking at transitive properties in terms of schedule, New Mexico State would probably slash the hell out of Alabama. Is what I'm thinking, right? I mean, we could go back centuries with mathematics, right? A equals B, you know, B equals C, A should equal C, right? I mean, you know, so I mean, we certainly have issues there on how teams are judged. I mean, Jeff brought up a good point that, you know, Alabama's defense could be pushed around. I'm sure New Mexico State would have ran silly on that defense, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it's a joke, and you know, I'll see the balance of my time here. I really have nothing else to say. Nothing else to say about that.
All right, Jeff, let me just close the show on this. And again, this will be one of a 2 or 3-parter for the sake of time. But basically, I heard this asked on the OVS and Giglio show. This question was asked by Luke DeCock from the News and Observer, Raw News and Observer. If John Swofford was still the commissioner of the ACC, do you think Florida State gets left
out? Yes. Yeah, I do. I don't think it you know, because I think John Swofford, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast of getting into
of course.
To him, but you know, I think it probably still happens if you just switch the names, because they were out to make it happen. But I mean, I 100% agree with Matthew that it doesn't help that Jim Phillips is so MIA on this, and he has been. I mean, you know, Sankey was out there talking about getting 2 SEC teams, and one of these teams is not like the other. His Sesame Street, you know, crazy analogy that he had, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's nonsense." But he was out there, and now, I mean, you have this network that would have interviewed you. I mean, and just doing that gets on social media. Like when EJ Manuel did his rant, it showed up on social media just a few minutes later. I mean, his passionate, you know, statements, and it wasn't just because it was Florida State. You know, I really, you know, he felt that way about them being left out. I think he would have done it for any of them.
Right.
And, you know, so that's one thing, is that you've got a network that you can speak positively about your conference, even if ESPN won't. And just like Matthew said, I mean, that, it might have happened anyways, but at least you could say, hey, he tried, but he didn't try. He hasn't been anywhere.
Right.
And I mean, that deserves a lot of criticism.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, tell you what, we'll cut the show here. We're going to continue to pick up on it next week. But quickly, where can we find your great work, Jeff and Matthew, as well? I know you're working on the same website, but please tell the folks again how to find you, where to find you, and your podcast schedule, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find our podcast on Sunday evenings. We put it on our site, allsportsdiscussion.com every week. You can find me tweeting about college sports and ACC at Talking ACC Sports. Hey, I mean, what can you do? You got to keep trying. I
Right.
mean, I think that that's one of the reasons we kind of started up the blog, is to kind of give the ACC a voice, and not being like, I'm not going to get into other names, but the ACC has a lot of media that spend more time criticizing the conference and the teams inside, which doesn't help either. And we want to try to bring, and you do too, Scott, bring that other side of like, hey, the conference is here as it is now, and has been, and whatever happens in the future happens in the future. But right now, there's an ACC, and it benefits everyone for it to be, successful rather than not. So why you're making fun of the conference that you're supposed to be a media personality for?
Right. For a discount, right?
For a discount, yeah.
Right. Oh God. All right, Matthew, where can I find your Twitter handle? I know you do mostly work under the website handle, but where can I find you? They want to holler at you about all things Virginia Tech.
So I'll say I spent a lot of time at the site Twitter account. That's really where you're going to find me now, at allsportsdacc. You'll see a lot of snarky takes there on a lot of topics. But then you'll see me, very rarely now, you'll probably see me at ASD_Hokie Smash, although I don't think I've logged in there for a couple of months because I've been spending so much time with snarky comments at allsportsdiscussion.com.
Sure.
And you'll see me blog. You'll of course see me blog at the site, like Jeff says, and you'll see our podcasts on Sunday nights. And we've had a terrific run. We're in the probably in the I believe we're sitting at podcast 480 here coming up pretty quick. So it's been a pretty good run. We figure we'll have a big party when we hit number 500,
Nice.
or something, sometime in 2024. It'll be fun, but we certainly enjoy it. We're kind of getting into, Jeff and I are kind of getting into the more classic version where we don't really have guests and we're just going back and forth. And we've done that the last couple of weeks where we've had really more open microphones where Jeff can go off, which has been fun. I'll occasionally step in, but it's been fun. It's been fun doing that. So thank you for having us on tonight. And, like I said, have a great holiday season. And, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
Yes, sir. You guys too. And also one more thing to the listeners out there, the viewers out there, please check those guys out. They do great work. I'm going to put the link in the description of YouTube. Also, speaking of which, continue to like, comment, share, subscribe. In any event, you'll be glad you did, and I'll be glad you did. So thank y'all. Till next time, we're going to pick this up next week. But until next time, take care, keep the faith. Peace out.